Please ignore the mess you may see in the background. I'm in the middle of trying to pack all my stuff for college. Every summer, something new becomes the victim of my obsessive personality, and this summer it was the 1959 classic Some Like It Hot, directed by Billy Wilder, starring Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, and my queen Marilyn Monroe. These two musicians, Joe and Jerry, are looking for a new music gig because their last one got raided. This takes place in Chicago in 1929, the Prohibition era, by the way. So the girl Joe was sitting at the time told them about a new gig. In an embarrassing way, they find out that it was for an all-girls band named Sweet Sue and her Society Syncopators. But they get offered a different gig, and they go off to go get the car that they're going to go travel in, but instead they see the St. Valentine's Day Massacre happen, which this was a real event. But in the movie, it was done by Spats Colombo and his gang instead of supposedly being done by Al Capone like it was in real life. So Spats Colombo notices them, and they're about to be killed, but they manage to escape, and they decide that they're going to join that all-girls band and become Josephine and Geraldine. Except it was Josephine and Daphne because this bitch doesn't like the name Geraldine.
Daphne? Well, I never did like the name Geraldine.
So now they're on the run from a whole gang. The movie follows two different love stories, one between Joe and his persona of Junior, who's a rich millionaire, and one of the girls in the band, Sugar Cane. And the other is between Daphne, aka Jerry, and a rich old millionaire named Osgood. Yeah, I'm not very good at explaining things, especially this movie, because just a lot of random crap happens. It's just one of those things you have to watch to really know anything about. So let's go back to the start. I want to tell you how we even got here. Billy Wilder took inspiration from the 1935 French film Fanfare d'Amour, which translates to Fanfare of Love. It also follows two musicians, Jean and Pierre, that are looking for jobs, and they come across an all-girls orchestra named Toops from Holland. While their time in the band, they fall in love with these two girls named Gabby and Poupette, and they go back and forth between being these rich, cool guys and then being Jeanette and Pierrette. And they go on dates with Poupette and Gabby. Though in the end they ultimately be revealed to be these two stupid guys, but the girls don't care and keep falling in love with them. It's an insane movie. I couldn't really comprehend it because I can only really read French, and I can't find the script or proper subtitles for it. The one I watched had Russian subtitles. Jeanette is low-key a baddie. Anyways, there was also a 1951 remake made in West Germany that same name, same plot, except the name of the characters were changed to German names. Female Hans is a baddie as well. Billy and his co-writer IAL Diamond couldn't find the original script for Fanfare d'Amour, so Walter Mirisch bought the script to the 1951 remake and they started writing the script. They knew from the start that they wanted Tony Curtis to play one of the leading men, Joe, and they wanted to have Jerry be played by Frank Sinatra, though Frank stood Billy up. They also offered Jerry Lewis the role of Jerry, but he didn't want to do drag. So they're struggling to get someone to play as Jerry, and then Billy saw Jack Lemmon in Operation Madball, and he's like, hey, that's our Jerry right there. And of course he accepted. And to Billy's surprise, Marilyn Monroe wanted the role as Sugar Cane, even though Billy and Marilyn worked together before, and they really butted heads and did not get along. And at this point, Marilyn also wanted to be taken more seriously and not just play stupid, dumb blondes, which that's how she saw Sugar. And of course, they've got Joey Brown to play Osgood, which, fun fact about Joe, he in Shut My Big Mouth did drag. And another fun fact, my college is 40 minutes away from where Joe was born. Yes, I'm from the same state as him. And it's also 30 minutes away from a park that was named after him. At first, Tony was sort of scared to be playing a character in drag, because both his friends and also Jack's friends tried to persuade them out of it. So, you know, Tony was a little bit scared, which made his character of Josephine seem more feminine and shy, ironically enough. But Jack, he didn't care. He went straight in, which made Daphne come off more tomboyish, I suppose. Then came filming, which was a pretty difficult process, considering Marilyn, she had to reshoot a lot of scenes because she either forgot her lines or just didn't like them. Also, Marilyn and Tony, their drama, it was insane. I'm not getting into it here. And also the fact that they didn't have the script done. They only had about 60 pages finished when they sent it out for all the actors to read, which had Jack Lemmon rolling off of his couch onto the floor with laughter. So they wrote the rest of it while the movie was being filmed. Hey, editing me here. I also want to add that the ending line, "Nobody is perfect," the one of the most iconic lines in cinema history, was actually just a placeholder because they didn't actually finish writing the end, but they felt like it fit, so they just kept it. Not to mention that Marilyn's contractors stated that all of her films must be in color, but Billy didn't want it to be in color. He wanted it to be black and white because, set in 1929, just sort of fit the vibes, and also the makeup that Jack and Tony wore, it had a green tint to them, and it also made them look like ghosts. They also had a slight problem when it came to Josephine's voice. Tony, he couldn't really have a high-pitched voice for long before his voice started cracking, so some of her lines were overdubbed by someone else, which explains why the audio is so weird in some spots and why Josephine is positioned weirdly, like facing away from the camera. So you couldn't really see any errors with lip syncing. I don't know, man. So the film is finished and it's time to be released. Should be easy, right? Yeah, no, ever heard of the Hays Code? If you somehow haven't heard of the Hays Code, it was a strict set of guidelines for film in America from 1934 to 1968. It ran off of Christian morals, so of course, no alcohol, no murder, more sexual or hot scenes, and of course, no gay or trans stories shown in a positive light. If you wanted gay or trans characters, they either had to have a tragic ending or be villains. Some Like It Hot had alcohol, murder, hot scenes, gay and trans characters, and also somehow portrayed Italians in a poor manner. I don't know. The people behind the Hays Code were really grasping at straws to make sure this movie wasn't released. But clearly the movie came out. The first set of test screeners were older people, so of course it didn't really get a really good reception, so they were worried. But then someone came up with the idea, hey, why don't we ask younger people to screen this? And it was a success. The movie was released without being given their approval seal, which made it a lot harder for them to get it into movie theaters, and it also, since it had no rating or approval, it was more for mature audiences, I suppose. And it was just straight up banned in Kansas. So that didn't stop Some Like It Hot from becoming the #1 movie in America, staying in the #1 spot for a total of 7 weeks. The Hays Code looked like a joke. They tried so hard to make sure that this movie came out, but instead, it became one of the most important movies in at least American history. The Hays Code was finally losing its power, and by the late 60s, it was practically dead. It was replaced by the Motion Picture Association, the MPA, rating system, which is what we have today. Some Like It Hot has gone on to become inspiration for many movies. If the plot of a movie is men getting in drag because they're in some sort of trouble, it all stems from Some Like It Hot. Tootsie, White Chicks, Connie and Carla, and Sorority Boys, just to name a few. And of course, movies are still having references to them, and they're still being compared in reviews, such as Secret Life of Pets, Jack and Jill, Top Gun, and even the Hannah Montana movie. But what did Some Like It Hot do to become so iconic and break the Hays Code, basically? I'm going to start from the top of the film, go through everything in chronological order that did or possibly did break the Hays Code. I'm going to start from the very start with the credits. Marilyn Monroe. The Hays Code love her. Bastards were already starting to sweat. They're like, oh shit, Marilyn Monroe. You know they're actually eating that up. Guys, no, I love my wife. No, I didn't watch that movie 500 times. No, I didn't review the Marilyn Monroe scene 500 times. We were just making sure that it wasn't inappropriate or something. We had to make sure for Hays Code. I know what you are. Now, the actual opening clip is a police chase. Why are they being chased? Alcohol! That's why. The club gets raided. It's serving alcohol. And then later on, we see a gang get murdered with guns. And after the murder with guns, we get introduced to the main reason why the censors hated this movie. Josephine and Daphne. 2 men in dresses, wigs, heels, and makeup. Oh, it's the end of the world! People also thought that Josephine and Daphne were a lot like lesbians. It's okay.
Good heavens! Search me!
They're an all-girls band. There's gonna be less.
This is a cow farm. You're gonna find cows outside.
Censors also really did not like the dresses that Sugar wore. There's literally one scene where they had to do the lighting in a specific way because you would just see through it. Again, you know they were eating that up. The scene with Junior and Sugar making out. Oh my god, how scandalous.
If I wasn't such a coward, I'd kill myself.
Don't get me started on the dance scene between Daphne and Osgood. Don't get me started on Daphne, don't get me started on Daphne. I don't think the censors liked Osgood and Daphne getting engaged, and Daphne still referring to Osgood as her fiance even after she takes off her wig and goes back to being Jerry for a second. Don't let them know about Josephine and Sugar kissing on the lips in front of everybody on the bandstand and no one having any reaction besides Sweet Sue because her band members were kissing on the job. More mobs, more murder, more weapons, all that crap. Osgood doesn't care if Daphne is a woman or a man, bisexual king or whatever you want to call him. Oh, and how could I forget the supposed poor rep of Italians? The only mention of Italians was the Syndicate being called fans or friends of the Italian opera or some shit. Do the censors think that only Italians could be mobsters? Or they don't? Overall, God forbid a man feels himself when wearing a dress and makeup. I actually found a letter that was written against this movie and the response. Please forgive me, I'm really bad at reading things out loud. Dear Jeff, for information, and I am sure interested reaction, Legion on March 12th rated the United Artists film Some Like It Hot, starring Marilyn Monroe as a morally objectionable in part for all, with the following objection noted. This film, though it's purposed to be a comedy, contains screen material elements that are judged to be seriously offensive to Christian and traditional standards of morality and decency. Furthermore, its treatment dwells, almost without relief, on gross suggestiveness and costuming, dialogue, and situations. Since the institution of the AAA method of classifying films in December 1957, this film has given the Legion the greatest cause for concern in its evaluation of Code Seal pictures. As you can well imagine, it bordered on I can't pronounce words. The subject matter of transvestism naturally leads in complications. In this film, there seemed to be a clear inference of homosexuality and lesbianism. The dialogue was not only double entendre, but outright smut. The offense in costuming was obvious. In the present atmosphere of our society, which seems to be calling for censorship and control, this picture would only add fuel to the fire. I thought you would be sincerely interested in our observations. Perhaps they might act as a stopgap in future decisions with which you are faced. With the best personal wishes to yourself and the staff, I remain. Cordially yours, Thomas F. Little. How do you think the people behind the movie reacted? Do you think they cared? No, they didn't. Dear Father Little, in reply of yours March 5th, we have been scanning very carefully the trade paper reviews of Some Like It Hot. To date, we have collected 8 such reports, including 2 for Martin Quigley's publication. Not a single reviewer has been in the slightest way critical of this film or questioned either its morality or its taste. So far, there is simply no adverse reaction at all, nothing but praise for this hilariously funny movie. I love slurring my words. I'm not suggesting, of course, that there are not dangers connected with a story of this type. But girls dressed as men and occasionally men dressed as women for proper plot purposes have been standard theatrical fare as far back as You Like It and 12th Night, and perhaps further. The classic example of a man masquerading in women's clothes without offense in Charlie's Aunt, which has been a hilarious hit for 3/4 of a century. It seems to boil down to the fact that if this material is handled properly, it can and will be accepted. Of course, if it is handled improperly, it could be enormously objectionable. But as indicated, 8 reviewers to date have seen this film, and their consensus without reservation is that it has been treated acceptably. We can only trust that the general public would be of the same mind, and that the alarm the Legion will understandably express may prove in the long run to be no worry at all. At any rate, that is the hope we are nourishing. We of course are not defending the exaggerated costumes worn by the leading lady, but we gather these were not your major concern. With kindest regard from the staff, I am very sincerely yours, Jeffrey M. Sherlock. During a time where the LGBT community wasn't accepted and often used as a butt and a joke, Some Like It Hot never used it for comedy at their expense. They were more of a concern about the wacky things Josephine and Daphne got into. Even with the engagement scene, they never diminished the community. He just pointed out that they can't legally get married and moved on. Joe was more of a just concerned of how Osgood would react to finding out that Daphne is a biological man. How I saw it, it was just Joe being concerned for his friend and just worried that his friend would get with someone that doesn't accept the true them and how they would react. Which brings me to Daphne telling Osgood that she's biologically a man, but Osgood not caring at all. He likes Daphne no matter what. And it becomes even more special when talking about the newer version of the musical. Yes, there's 2 versions, where Osgood helps Daphne discover herself. In the musical, she even comes out as trans to Joe, and Joe accepts her. When it comes to the end of the musical, Daphne is trying to tell Osgood that she's biologically a man and goes through all the same things that Daphne said at the end of the movie. So when Daphne's about to say, "You don't understand," Osgood stops her and says that he does understand. He says that he thinks that she's perfect no matter what, and that his love for Daphne truly transcends gender. I have such a deep love and connection with this movie and musical, especially with Daphne. I've had a weird and complicated relationship with gender my entire life. While all my friends were figuring out who they were and becoming comfortable, I felt like I wasn't, and I was just confused for a really long time. I didn't know who I was. It wasn't until this past year that I felt like I found myself, and that's why I love Daphne so much. She was confused at first, and we got to see the process of her discovering who she was. She didn't know straight away and had to get some help for her to discover herself. And that's okay, you're not always going to know this stuff from the start. You can think one thing, but then it's actually not that, and then you could change it again and be like, that doesn't fit, and then it just takes so long, and then you finally find it, and you're like, oh, cool. Sometimes odd shit has to happen for you to discover something. In her case, it was watching a gang get murdered. I cannot imagine how it felt for people like me when this movie came out. Of course it's not perfect, but seeing characters that are like trans and all of that not be treated like so poorly and as a joke, it must have been nice. It didn't end in a tragedy, and given the circumstances, they got a happy ending. Even though the movie never confirmed Daphne to be trans, though I feel like it's heavily implied, especially with the musical making her trans, I still think she's a great trans character. And she might be one of the best, if not the best, trans characters I've seen in film. I love you, Daphne, from hit film Some Like It Hot. So yeah, that's how Billy Wilder and the Three Stooges killed the Hays Code.
I'm a girl. I wish I were dead.